Hey, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, here with a editorial. So last night I went to see Avatar: Aang The Last Airbender, which is hereby going to be known as Avatar because I am not saying that long name over and over again. And this movie had a lot of controversy with its release. Originally used as like a plan to kind of relaunch the Avatar franchise, the movie kept getting delayed and delayed until it basically wound up on Paramount Plus in a pivot from theatrical to streaming to add more issues to the whole complicated release thing. Originally, it was going to be dumped on Paramount Plus in October, but the full movie leaked online a few months ago, which meant that Paramount moved up the streaming release. But they did surprise fans with a screening at San Diego Comic-Con, and they did put it in two AMC theaters for a qualifying Oscar run. Now, here's the thing. I am under no illusion that this movie is going to get an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature. I don't think it honestly deserves one, especially since it is very hostile to new viewers, which we will talk about in more detail. But that being said, as an Avatar fan, this was definitely a good movie, and I am so glad that even though it took me an hour to drive to Burbank and an hour to drive home, I got to experience this on a big screen. It was beautiful to look at. The music was really awesome. And it reminded me why I love the franchise so much in the first place. The bottom line is if you are a fan of Avatar, you are definitely going to love this movie. This is a great continuation to a series that, in my opinion, had pretty much as close to a perfect run as a TV show can have. But the question keeps arising, why on earth would this thing be sent straight to streaming? And having watched the movie, I think I understand why it went straight to streaming. Here's the thing. You know how I said it wouldn't get an Oscar nomination uh, for Best Animated Feature because basically the movie is not friendly to newcomers. I know some of us Avatar fans might want to say, well, you can just enjoy the animation, you can enjoy the music. They give you enough to work with. My response to that is no, it doesn't. This movie is extremely confusing unless you actually watched the 3 seasons of the show. Now, some people might point to the recent Demon Slayer movies like, well, those movies required homework as well for you to understand the movie, but those did insanely well at the box office. Why can't Avatar? Guys, Demon Slayer is a current property that is active, and when the Infinity Castle movie came out, it had been just a little under or a little over a year since the previous season had aired on TV, so people were ready and waiting to watch that in theaters. But Avatar has basically been dormant for 20 years. I don't know if the fan base ever went away, but it certainly has not been active for a very long time. And to expect all those people to simply show up at the theaters was a major risk to the studio. Now, the movie was not very expensive. I hear the budget was about $80 million, but to properly market it, you got to spend another $50 to $80 million to market it. And as it has to be explained, box office grosses are not entirely what the studio gets. You have to make 2.5 times the amount of money you spent on a movie at the box office break even. So if this movie cost, let's say they spent $130 million on it for the making the movie, marketing, prints and advertising, well, the movie would need to make about $260 million to break even after the theaters take their cut and everything like that. That's not impossible. They very well could have made that money, but on paper, it's like, okay, there's some red flags here. Even though it's unfair, you can't deny that action animation, especially when it's 2D, has struggled at the box office. It has. That's undeniable. Also, you have a movie that's based on a franchise that hasn't been active for a couple decades, even though because it's so good, it's never really gone away. But, they haven't made new episodes in a long time and things like that. And then you have the budget, which is not outrageous, but to get to that kind of money for a movie that is not friendly to casual viewers, that was considered a risk. I mean, look, if you're an executive and you're sitting there and you're watching this movie, I bet you the executives watched this movie and they were just confused about what was going on. Like, hey, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. But here's the thing. I bet you the executives said the same thing when they were watching the Demon Slayer movie. And granted, I know that the Demon Slayer movie was distributed by Sony and Avatar was distributed by Paramount. That's kind of not the point I'm trying to make. But I bet you both the executives didn't understand what it was they're watching. But one executive group knew something that the other didn't. One executive group knew that their franchise was current, it was popular, it was active, it was making money, and so releasing it in theaters was not this huge risk. The other group of executives had this movie that, well, they know that the property is popular, but it's really not active. Who knows if it's going to be active again in a while? Is this really the best way to introduce it? And then there's one more element. When the most recent SpongeBob movie was released in theaters, it did not do well. It didn't outright bomb, but it certainly didn't make money. And unlike Avatar, SpongeBob is a money printing machine. It has been for the last 20 plus years. Unlike Avatar, which has been dormant for the last 20 years. Everyone and their grandma knows what SpongeBob is. They don't need to be introduced to it. It's very self-contained. And the movie was good. Like, I enjoyed the Sponge Out of Water movie that was released recently, but it was a financial failure. Now, part of that was probably because they put it against another Avatar movie that it had no business going up against. But the bottom line is, if SpongeBob, their most trusted IP, lost money at the box office, what hope did Avatar have in the eyes of the executives? So they did something that I think if we were in their shoes and we were not looking at this as animation fans, but as business people, we would probably make the same decision. We would hedge our bets. We'd say, you know what? This is $80 million. We'd have to spend at least another $50 million. Who knows if it's actually going to make money? Why don't we just put it on Paramount Plus, where we know that fans of the TV series are, and we can use the algorithm to push that to Paramount Plus. And, that was the thinking. And so that's why I think the movie was ultimately scrapped for the theatrical release. It wasn't because of the quality of the movie, because now that I've seen it, I can tell you it is very good, but it's only very good if you're a fan of Avatar. And I think that was the question they couldn't quite answer. How many people are actually going to want to see this that are Avatar fans? Now, since the movie has been released on streaming, we do have a couple new numbers. Those two theaters that showed it, the Burbank and the Lincoln Square AMC, those sold out pretty much in minutes, and it sold out for the whole week. So basically, all the Avatar fans got funneled into these two theaters. That doesn't mean the theaters would have sold out had it been in a major release. But another number did make the round, and that was that the movie sold, not sold, but it had 28 million viewers worldwide on Paramount Plus. Now, if we were to assume that every single one of those people would have bought a ticket to the movie, and that the tickets average $12.49 per ticket, that means the movie would have grossed roughly $349.7 million, which would have been a very healthy profit for Paramount. But of course, not every single one of those streams was going to buy a ticket, because some people just watched it because it was on the app. Some people, okay, maybe they would have watched it at some point, but they might not have watched it on the opening weekend. Let's just say that ultimately the movie sold 18 million tickets worldwide at the average price of $12.49, and you would have had a box office worldwide gross of roughly $224.8 million. That would have been pretty close to the break even point. So, but we didn't have this information beforehand, and then to compound the situation, while the fans were campaigning to try to get this thing back in theaters, the stupid thing leaked online, and as a result, like Paramount had even less incentive to put it into theaters. But hindsight being 2020, knowing what we know now, that the movie was pretty good, knowing that the Avatar fan base was still much more active than we realized, and maybe putting it during a time period where there was less competition at the box office, I think the movie might have at the very least broken even. This would not have made $1 billion. I don't even think it would have made $500 million, and it wouldn't have brought in a new wave of 2D animation, but I think it would have at the very least made a little bit of a profit, and of course would have turned people onto the Avatar franchise again as a new franchise was launching. Now, if the new Avatar series is as good as we hope it's going to be, if a movie is made of that one, I don't think Paramount will blink. That one probably goes to theaters. But for my money, even though I think Avatar fans were robbed because this totally deserves to be seen in theaters, the animation, the sound, it was a great experience. I don't regret that long ride. But at the end of the day, when you look at the practical reality of this franchise, the fact that it had been dormant for 20 years, the fact that the movie really doesn't make a lot of sense unless you've committed to watching 3 seasons of a TV show that aired over 20 years ago, and the fact that SpongeBob didn't do well and that was supposed to be a guaranteed moneymaker, it kind of makes sense that Paramount executives decided, we're going to cut our losses. It's going to go to streaming. And by the way, let's still be glad that that's what happened, because when Warner Brothers decided they didn't want to spend any more money on Coyote versus Acme, that thing got shelved for a tax write-off, although thankfully it will finally be seen in theaters this August, and hopefully if you wanted to see that movie and you made noise on social media, you'll buy a ticket to that one. But that's my thoughts on this whole Avatar streaming theatrical situation. I'm curious, do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.